Greetings, friends. A few words about the collapse of the former Syrian government, the new regime, and the resistance. The collapse, I think it's fair to say, was unexpected. Although there were warnings that there was going to be an offensive from the Turkish-backed armed groups in northern Idlib, the collapse of the Syrian army was really not predicted by any side, I don't think. The offensive was organised by the US, by Erdogan and by the Israelis after the failure of the Israeli operation to make incursions into southern Lebanon. Effectively, Netanyahu had failed in Gaza, he'd failed in Lebanon, he was looking for some vindication, some new front in which to gain a success, and he did that with Syria. But the offensive into Aleppo first, and then the collapse of Aleppo, of Hama, of Homs, and the takeover of Damascus was unexpected. We don't know all the details yet about why this happened, but it seems to me fairly clear it's to do with the Syrian command. Of course, the rising corruption undermined that command, but also the responsibility of the commander-in-chief, Bashar al-Assad, has to be recognised, really. There is a lot of bitterness still now in Syria because of the rapid departure without any warning, without any explanation by the former president. So many people who were close to the government are very critical of the role of Bashar al-Assad now, and there doesn't seem to be any role in the future resistance there, though there is resistance in Syria. The new regime, of course, suits the US plans, which was to divide and weaken Syria. We don't know yet whether the US wants to move ahead to a Libyan situation where there is sectarian violence for a decade or more, or an Iraqi situation where they try and intervene and create some federation which weakens the state by creating enclaves, ethnic enclaves, which starts to make the Israelis look more normal. The Israelis tend to favour that approach too. Of course, the Israelis have taken over parts of southern Syria so far. They talk about a buffer zone, just as they talk about buffer zones in Gaza, in southern Lebanon, in all of the Levant, really. It's another way of stealing land, basically. And Erdogan, of course, has some ambitions too. He was the key backer of these groups in northern Idlib with finance from the Qataris. And so we can expect to see Erdogan playing some card against the US, which is still supporting their proxy Kurdish group, the SDF, or Qassad as they're known in Syria. The HTS regime, such as it is not capable of governing the country. It's very clear, it's chaotic. There is sectarian violence. They're trying to say it's due to some revenge motives and some groups other than HTS, but really it's clear that HTS and its allies persist in this sectarian Takfiri ideology, and the greatest targets of it are the Alawi group, which were identified with many command positions in the army. There's been an ongoing slaughter and abuses against Alawi people in Damascus and on the coast, basically, and the Christians have also come under attack. So the minorities are in deep trouble. And whatever you say about the regime of Bashar al-Assad, yes, there was corruption, but no more in other Arab regimes in the region. The brutality allegations were exaggerated and were to do with the fight of the Syrian army against the armed groups, so the Al-Qaeda and ISIS groups, basically. So the US exaggerated that with claims of chemical weapons and so on, just to try and normalize, to try and justify the brutality of the Al-Qaeda and ISIS groups now. So what the Assad regime had, which was most objectionable to the US and to the Israelis, was that it presided over a constitutionally pluralist Syria where there was inclusivity in national terms. Everyone was Syrian. They weren't regarded as superior or inferior because of their sect. It was an independent state which wasn't doing the bidding of the US, and it resisted the Israelis and supported the Palestinians. In fact, it provided weapons to the Palestinian resistance, and that was the key objection to the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad. As I said, there are Assad loyalists still in Syria, but more than that, there's Syrian Arab resistance. There has been resistance. It's in a guerrilla form. It's not well organized. We know the Israelis have bombed all of the key equipment and air defense equipment in particular of Syria. So the capacity to build a Syrian army which resists the Israeli is virtually destroyed. But there are pockets of resistance around the country, and that will increase because resistance really comes from the position of the people. They don't want this sectarian Al-Qaeda type Takfiri ideology. It's not native to Syria. It comes from the Gulf monarchies and this Salafism and throat cutting and so on.